topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, San Antonio. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts over the last 16 years in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. I got to tell you, there's certain shows that I enjoy doing so much that I look forward, I look in the calendar and see when their shows are coming up. And this morning, we have got one of those shows. I got to tell you, we are getting so many emails with your questions, and I read every single one of them. And as you will see, we also direct you to the offices of the law firm of Lance Drury. I can tell we are getting so many new listeners by your questions. We got so many questions this week. Let's welcome he actually is one of my favorites, attorney Lance Drury. Good morning, Lance.
Good morning, Steve. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. You know, I love doing your show. You are from my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, and it just always think about my days as a kid growing up in St. Louis, actually in University City. Lance, people have so much respect for the way you handle your show, how you answer questions. We're getting so many new people tuning into your show. Tell people about the law firm of Lance Drury.
Well, Steve, we have 4 offices. I'm from St. Genevieve, Missouri, which is a small historic town on the banks of the Mississippi, about an hour south of St. Louis. So I had, phone calls with people Saturday morning. Then I drove to my St. Louis office. We also have offices in Nashville, Tennessee, and San Antonio, Texas. I'll probably be in San Antonio next week. And Steve, I've said this before, but guess what? We're going to have another office down there at the bottom of the screen with a new phone number for Houston, Texas. We're going to set up an office in Houston, Texas. My 2 LA lawyers are now in San Antonio. We're going to hire a virtual assistant who's bilingual. And so we're going to keep growing, Steve, because I'm in the prime of my life. I got to keep growing the business.
Hey, speaking of growing, I want to let everybody know that starting next month, the first Monday of the month at 9:25 Eastern Time, you're going to be doing a national show with us. We're so excited. Talk about growing.
I got to tell you, I'm excited about it.
I am. Go ahead.
We get people out of New York. We get people out of California. We get people out of Florida. In fact, I have an attorney who's stationed in Orlando, Florida. So, people will drive through St. Louis, Nashville, San Antonio, hear the commercial, and then they'll call. But the guy in New York, I got a guy from Yonkers, New York. I represented a guy in Missouri several years ago, and he told this guy to call me. So, that's the best kind of advertising is the referrals, because you don't have to pay any money for that.
Yeah,
so we get a lot of referrals from attorneys and accountants because we send out a newsletter every other month. And so we get a lot of referrals. And once they send them, they keep sending them because the clients are pretty well pleased with our services 97, 98% of the time. In fact, Steve, we're a 4.8 out of 5 now in St. Louis, a 4.9 out of 5 Google reviews in Nashville, Tennessee. We have 6 people in the Nashville office. So, we keep growing, and we'll soon have our 17th individual working for the firm.
Wow. Lance, I'm going to tell you something. I do a lot of due diligence, and we've talked about this on the show before. You see a lot of these national companies making, I'm going to say, some false promises, but if you go in and read the reviews about them, it's like, hey, they took my money and then I never heard from them again. And these are
Right.
these big companies. And I know customer service is so important to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I tell everybody, if you don't hire my firm, there's 3 rules. You want to hire an attorney that does this every single day. Accountants are great with the numbers, but 90% of what they do is preparing tax returns. It's not dealing with the IRS. And every attorney in my office has seen accountants royally screw things up with the IRS. I tell them to go local and don't hire one of the big boys. There's a lot of scam artists out there. The industry has a bad reputation in some aspects because of those big national firms. They have a salesman on the phone for the initial consult. They never tell you what it's going to cost you up front to get the problem resolved. And they just keep asking for more money, and a lot of them don't do the work. So, those are the 3 rules if you don't hire my firm.
Well, you know what, Lance? The biggest complaint because you brought up Google, the biggest complaint is never returning phone calls. And, this is something from your clients what a burden this is when you have the IRS after you and the sleepless nights, and it reflects so much on your entire being. And to have a company like yours, a law firm like yours, first of all, you're right. This is so great. This is all you do. You specialize in this area, but which you can release all these headaches and pressures because you've got so many things in your toolbox.
That's exactly right. And I have to tell you, and this was true even when I was just a small town lawyer and I did general practice, which is a tough row to hoe, I got to tell you. But the biggest complaint about lawyers has always been lack of client communication. That's the biggest complaint that they lodge against their attorneys, respective of what field you're talking about. So we value that. We get a hold of everybody at least once a month. And, if there are cases where we're talking to people every day just about. We got a guy down in San Antonio, and he's being audited. And my 2 attorneys down there rented a car and went out to his ranch because he's being audited by the IRS over what so-called hobby losses. They're saying, you might.
What is that?
Well, if the business is not profitable and hasn't been for a lot of years, they consider it a hobby. You're not running a profitable business, so they won't allow you to take those losses. So, he's paid us a lot of money, and he's going to continue to pay us a lot of money. But guess what? I met with him last September in San Antonio. And he was talking about a guy that I know, an attorney out of Houston, who I had heard nothing bad about. And so I explained to him what a notice of deficiency was, what it meant to go to U.S. tax court. And he said, this has never been brought up to me. Nobody's ever explained this. My attorney didn't explain this to me. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, go back to him. If you have any problems in the future, give me a call. Well, he had problems with lack of communication. And he even called the auditor and said, is this guy in communication with you? And he said, no, he's just kind of ghosted us. So he hired us right then and there, overnighted a check to us. And So we're working almost every day on this case, but he's paying us a lot of money and is going to continue to pay us a lot of money. So you got to take care of those people.
Exactly. And I think, Lance, I know you'll agree with me. It's so important once a person hires or retains your firm, they have to be totally honest with you and not leave anything hidden under the rocks, so to say.
Right. And we've got a client now and they're in Missouri, and I don't think he told us everything up front. He's got a revenue officer and they're debating whether or not they want to give him an installment agreement because he has a long history of non-compliance with the IRS. He's been given several installment agreements in the past and defaulted on all of them. And that's one of the things he didn't tell us during the initial consult. And so, when you have a long history of non-compliance with the IRS, sometimes it takes a lot more time to try to get a resolution with the IRS. So I don't know what's going to happen in that particular case. But yeah, you've got to stay. Once people come to me, they have to start being compliant or we're not going to get them a deal. I got a phone call with a guy tomorrow and he's hired us for several years, but he won't make estimated tax payments. So he's continuing to accrue tax liability. And I'm just going to tell him tomorrow because we're asking him for more money. I'm going to be very upfront with him. Do not pay me this money if you're not going to do what we ask you to do, because we can't help you out. Nobody can help you out if you continue to pyramid tax liability with the IRS, because nobody's going to get a deal or give you a deal if you're not making your estimated tax payment. So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I don't want people wasting their money. So I tell them all in the initial consult, you have to do what we ask you to do. If they have unfiled returns, they got to get the last 6 years tax returns prepared and filed, because Uncle Sam won't even talk about an installment agreement or any other type of agreement until the last 6 years returns are prepared and filed. And then they got to get us the financial information that we need.
Right.
And they got to make estimated tax payments. And so I tell people, don't wait till the end of the quarter. There's nothing magical about that. Uncle Sam will take your money anytime. So do it at the end of each month at a minimum, because you wait till the end of the quarter, guess what? They will have spent the money on something else.
Exactly.
And then they're not going to have the money to make their estimated tax payment.
We got several letters, Lance, and there seems like the people who just found your show, and I guess you've kind of gotten to them. Both letters, both mainly said the same thing. I have not filed. One was 2 years, one was 4 years. Do I wait to get a letter from the IRS, or do I contact your office before I get that letter?
No, you always want to be proactive about this. And here's the other problem. I can't tell people not to file their tax returns because it's a crime not to file your tax returns. So the first thing I'm going to tell people when they come to me and they have unfiled returns is we can prepare those for you. But you've got to get those returns filed, because you can't even negotiate with the IRS until the last 6 years returns are prepared and filed. And Steve, you remember earlier today when I said that, people shouldn't go to accountants because they just dabble in this. They don't know all the rules. Here's the biggest problem I've seen with accountants is that if a client has 10 years of unfiled returns and they're self-employed, the accountants will say, well, you got to file all the returns. That's not true. You only need the last 6 years. And remember, if you don't file and Uncle Sam hasn't filed, your tax liability is zero. So for all those years prior to 2019, if you're self-employed, hadn't made estimated tax payments, you're going to owe tens of thousands of dollars to the IRS for those prior years. And you're putting liability on the books that doesn't have to be there. So that is one of the biggest things, that accountants just aren't aware of that. I've got to tell you, Steve, when I was a small town lawyer 15 hours of continuing legal education a year. Now, all of my attorneys and myself, we spend 50 to 100 hours or more every year just to keep up with this. In early November, we have a 3-day webinar, and we do this all year long because they're a bureaucracy. Things are constantly changing, so you've got to keep up on this. And that's why I say accountants are great with the numbers, but you don't want to go to an accountant for tax resolution for the most part, because 90% of what they do is tax preparation. It's not dealing with the IRS.
Got a question from Mark in New Brunswick. I don't know if you know where New Brunswick is. It's right outside San Antonio.
I
And he
do.
said, oh, okay. So he wanted to know, he said, do I qualify for a low income certification? I've never heard of that.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's the proper language. What I can tell you is that sometimes if you prepare an offer in compromise, if you're low income, they will waive the filing fee for that. And again, if for other things, if you don't have a lot of income, we can probably get you a great deal. 85 to 90% of my clients never pay back the full amount. 10 to 15% never pay a dime, because it's all based on your ability to pay it back. And so if you're low income, you're more likely to not pay a lot of it back than somebody who's making all kinds of money. So, so you could either get placed into currently non-collectible, which means due to a financial hardship, you don't have the ability to pay any of it back. They leave you alone. They send you a yearly reminder that you owe the tax, but they're not coming after you. They're not going to levy you. I got to tell you a story, Steve. Several years ago, I had a client. He owed $40,000, and this is when I was still doing cases myself. We've gotten too big for me to do that now. And I got him a deal where he wasn't paying a dime. So we send him the letter. We said, they're going to send you yearly reminders, but they're not going to come after you. So 6 months, we revoked our power of attorney. We'd gotten him a deal. So 6 months later, he calls me and he says, oh, I got that letter, and I panicked, and I called him up, and I agreed to pay every single dime back. I said, why didn't you call me before you called the IRS? I would have told you that that's just the yearly reminder. But he panicked, and he didn't call me. And, that happens with people. People panic. They think they can do this on their own. And, they set themselves up on a payment plan that they can't afford, because the IRS takes advantage of lay people. They're just going to make them pay back the full amount. And the reason I know that is people come to me after they've set that up, and the first words out of their mouth are, I can't afford the monthly payment. And I go, then why did you agree to pay that? And they go, because this is what the IRS told me I had to pay. That's not true. It's all based on your ability to pay it back. I just got a gentleman out of San Antonio. He did this himself. I talked to him Saturday morning, and he owes about $70,000. And he set himself up on a payment plan. He's older, so, they're both basically part-time people. He hasn't paid on that plan for the last 2 months, and that's because the IRS set him up with almost $1,000 a month payment. The problem is, at least for now, he's going to have to find a way to come up with the money. But at the moment, he can't come up with the money to pay me because there's no money left over at the end of the month.
Right.
So what's going to happen is, if he doesn't call me and hire me, they're just going to default him on the agreement, and they're going to start levying against him, which means they can take 15% of his Social Security. That's up front. But if that Social Security is deposited into his bank account, which they are all the time, they can take every single dime of that Social Security. Or they can garnish his wages or take 100% of his 1099s. So until you have an agreement in place and you're paying on it, you're subject to the whim of the IRS, and you could get wiped out in your paycheck. They could take 90% of your take-home pay. You could have 100% of your bank account wiped out. So you better get professional help before that happens.
This is from Myrna in Universal City. I'm really enjoying your show. Thank you for sending us Lance's contact information. I want to know, can the lien on my account be removed?
Probably not if you owe a lot of money to the IRS. But the good news is that lien doesn't last forever. There's a
Mm,
collection statute expiration date. Normally, the IRS does not have the right to collect for 10 years after the date the tax is assessed. However, it's very seldom just 10 years because there's so many things that can stop the running of the statute on collections that we have to go in for each period of tax liability and calculate when that is. So here's another problem with the IRS. In the old days, it used to be almost automatic. 6 to 9 months before the collection statute expired, they would remove the lien, they would release it. But they're not doing that now. And so they have to hire us to go in and go through the formal process of getting that lien removed. So the good news is the lien doesn't last forever. But if it's over $10,000 in liability, the IRS has the right to file the lien, and they're going to do that. They're just like your mortgage company. They consider that this is a loan, your unpaid tax liability, and so they have to perfect that interest so they take priority over other creditors. So they file a notice of federal tax lien in the county in which you live at the Recorder of Deeds office. But like I said, that the good news is the lien doesn't last forever.
that is good news. Lance, you also handle businesses too, not just individuals.
Yes, we do that all the time. And I'd say 70% of our clientele is self-employed, at least 70%, maybe more. And the reason is those people get in trouble more often because the taxes aren't automatically taken out and they don't make their estimated tax payments. And, everybody thinks that working for yourself's the American dream, but, I would say 75, 80% of self-employed people don't make $80,000 a year. And then you got to fund your own health insurance. You got to fund your own pension. You work long hours, and it's a lot of paperwork, and the last thing, these people work long hours. They get home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And the last thing they want to do is do paperwork. So that's
Yes.
what gets them into problems. And, you got to be a different kind of animal to run your own business. It's not for everybody.
Well, I got to tell you, we're getting a lot of text in. People really enjoy your show. I saw a show the other day because I watch a lot of different type of shows, and it was um, he wasn't an attorney. He wasn't a tax attorney. And it was amazing. People would write in questions and he would have to go look them up. You're amazing. It doesn't matter what question anybody has, it just flows off the top of your head. And I just want to tell you, we so appreciate your show. Tell people how they can reach your office.
Well, I don't have all the phone numbers memorized, but I can tell you, you can go to lancedrurylaw.com and that'll give you all the phone numbers. And there's also a link on there where you can get a hold of us. So, just go to lancedrurylaw.com and you'll be able to find us.
Hey, and if you've got people who are having tax issues in the Missouri Tennessee area, Lance's show with us is I believe it's this Friday. Yes, this Friday at I believe it's at 1 o'clock Central Time. Lance, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate you. I always look so forward to doing your show, and I'll see you on Friday.
That sounds great, Steve. It's always a pleasure being here. I like talking to you all the time as
I
well.
love talking to you. Thanks, Lance. Lance Drury, give him a call. I'm telling you, you've got a tax issue, he can help you. Hey, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back with more.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.